Hi, this is Desiree Flores. I'm here with Eddie Bravo, Anthony Birchak, and John Botello. And we're here today to talk about gi versus no gi jiu-jitsu training, specifically for MMA fighters. So we'll start with you, Eddie. Why do you believe that you don't need to train in a gi at all if your goal is MMA?
Because I have plenty of students that have never trained in the gi and they're fighting in MMA. Tony Ferguson, he never trains in the gi.
Okay, which he just recently received his black belt from you?
Yes.
Okay, but what about it? Why don't you need a gi?
Well, same reason why wrestlers don't need to do judo to fight MMA. Judo helps. Judo does translate to MMA, but does a wrestler need to train judo so that he could fight MMA?
And what's your response to that, Anthony?
That's actually one of the true statements, right? Is that when you're a wrestler, you wear spandex, you don't wear a gi, you don't wear a kimono top. You know, something like sambo, that's kind of the hybrid of two with a kimono top and MMA shorts, is different. But at the same time, the grips aren't there. So when you get into a combative situation with somebody and there's nothing to grab onto other than clinches, then 90% of your offense has been taken away. So I like to play devil's advocate because I started in the gi, much like Eddie. Started in the gi and then went to no gi because I realized that the tools that I learned there they're no longer there. So it just makes more sense being able to use body clinches versus grabbing onto something.
Okay, and how do you feel, John?
I feel the same as Eddie on the subject. Is when the gi's stripped away and punches are being thrown, you're automatically going to want to clinch in close space. So in our system's a clinching system, so we're learning to operate in the clinch. So in the clinch you have defense, but you automatically have offense if you know how to work within that clinch.
So how do you all feel about, I talked to Tonquino the other day, and he's so adamant that when you have a gi on, it's so much harder. You have to learn the technique so much stronger, that you can't use certain advantages that you can use in no gi. What would your response be to that?
It's just two different sports. It's just like judo. It's the same thing. Like judo and wrestling, they have the same objective, the same sport. Generally, take the person down. In judo, you take a person down by grabbing their collar and sleeve, and that's where most of the throws are some kind of grabbing of the collar. And in wrestling, it's all based on clinching. Same thing, trying to take your opponent down, but now you don't have all these handles. Now you got to really develop clinches. And same sport though. And same thing with jiu-jitsu. There's the judo side, which is all based on grabbing clothes, and then there's the no-gi side, just like wrestling. In MMA, we know that we know this for sure, 100%. Wrestling is the best sport for takedowns as far as MMA is concerned. Yes, judo guys do translate, and they got some good takedowns, they got some good throws, they're hard to take down. But it's clear that the wrestling is far superior in MMA than it is in judo, and the only difference is the gi. So the same thing applies on the ground. Same objective on the ground, gi and no gi. We're trying to get to the neck. We're trying to tap them out. One sport, you do it by yanking and pulling on each other's clothes, and one sport, no gi, you do it with clinches. It's just like wrestling and judo. It's the exact same thing. So to say that wrestling is better than judo, or translates better to judo in regards to MMA, and then say that gi jiu-jitsu translates better than no gi jiu-jitsu in MMA doesn't make any sense. There's no science there.
You guys agree with that?
Right. So when you look at the dominant forces that can come into MMA raw and be largely successful are wrestlers with submission knowledge, right? Because again, wrestling, they wear singlets or compression tops. Greco-Roman wrestling is much like judo, right? Greco-Roman wrestling is no-gi judo, like we were speaking about yesterday. The only thing that wrestling lacks is the submission, the choke, the lock, stuff that are gonna guard passing, things like that. Giving up the back versus giving up, playing guard. Those are the things that are different. But when you see the sport in a tree, wrestling, no-gi jiu-jitsu are on one side, judo and gi jiu-jitsu are on the other side. And that's just the dichotomy of the two sports.
Yes, gi jiu-jitsu and judo, they both use the gi, and they both translate into MMA. We've seen champions from judo, champions from the gi, of course. But you also have the other side. How many wrestling champions have we had in the UFC?
Right.
You know, so there isn't that big of a pool when it comes to no gi jiu-jitsu, because most jiu-jitsu schools train in the gi. Very few schools, so there's not a big pool. But you have, my black belt, Gio Martinez, he's never trained in the gi. He's been to Abu Dhabi twice. He finished in the Final Four his first year in Abu Dhabi. And he's an EBI champion. He's been a multiple EBI champion. He's never worn a gi.
So you think you can easily, you need just as much technique to learn defense and jiu-jitsu as you need in a gi?
And certain, when it comes to defense, it's a little tricky, because yes, you can't slip out of stuff. You can't yank and slip out of stuff, yes, as easily. But people in the gi, they use the gi for defense too. Like, they're not going to slip out though. Like for an arm bar, you grab your own gi. If someone's on your ankle, you grab their gi. You know, someone has a kimura, you grab your gi. So is that defense? That part of the defense going to work? No gi? No, it's not. That part's not going to translate. Where part of your defensive structure was grabbing onto your gi, he's going to arm bar you, hold on to your collar. How is that going to translate? So it's harder to slip out, because because of all the friction, it's not sweaty. But there's other factors too, where the grabbing your own gi defensively, that's huge in gi jiu-jitsu. So,
And the only time you'll see stuff like that is I see it a lot in the UFC on kimuras, right? Someone has a kimura, they grab the inside of their shorts here.
Yeah.
And you can always grab your own uniform, you can just not grab your opponent's uniform. So that's the only time you're gonna see an arm lock get defended by, rather than grabbing your gi collar or your kimono top, you can grab inside your shorts. You can hope to grab your spandex, but that's the only time that defense is really gonna play a big part. Other than that, kind of like what Eddie said earlier in the seminar was, the offense, if they're dry, you gotta go quick. Because once they start sweating and that body oil and grease starts coming out, everything's just gonna start slipping, and your defense goes up, your offense goes down. So that's the biggest thing between trying to slip out of an armbar with a rash guard on and trying to slip out of an armbar with a gi top on.
the craziest thing about this whole debate is that there actually is even a debate about it. And I can't believe there's a debate about it. It's so obvious. It's so
In
obvious.
MMA, you don't really see double wrist control anymore either. You see everybody using overhooks and underhooks. You don't see this anymore because people are taking too much punishment from the guard. So, and a lot of gi players that I know, they say, well, I'm using my no gi grips in the gi now because it transfers easier from gi to no gi whenever I compete. So a lot of people are catching on.
No gi translates to gi. The gi doesn't translate to no gi as well. There's a lot of things from the gi that you can't take to no gi, but everything from no gi you could take to the gi.
Much like wrestling will always help your jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu will never help your wrestling.
Gotcha. Okay, and all three of you, I want to clear up, you all started in a gi, right?
Yes.
I started in a gi.
You started in a gi?
He started in a gi.
I got my black belt in a gi.
I started in
Right.
a gi.
So you all have experience in a gi and still
We've been
find
there.
it.
I got my black
Right.
belt in the gi.
Yeah.
Right. I should be all Mr. Gi defender. I got my gi in the black belt. I'm just, again, it's shocking.
So it's
shocking
some people
that
have said that they don't know if you even believe it, which you clearly do, that you like no gi better than gi for MMA, which you clearly do, but that they also know that you want to help jiu-jitsu move forward, like be easy for just anybody to come and start training to help it grow for the future.
My main point is that it's all jiu-jitsu. Whether you're wearing a gi or not wearing a gi, it's still jiu-jitsu. If you think that no gi jiu-jitsu is not jiu-jitsu, then I guess Minotauro has never used jiu-jitsu to win any of his fights. I guess Hickson doesn't do jiu-jitsu. Hey, Hickson's like the only guy to ever wear a gi. The only guy ever was Royce Gracie. He was the first guy. He made the biggest impact. So that
I want to look at contracts and see if they say you can't wear a gi anymore in the UFC.
you can't.
I haven't seen it. I don't read stuff like that.
Mercedes, you just don't read it. She reads this stuff.
Gi pants aren't even allowed. So
Because like at Ryzen, they let you wear.
You can wear whatever you want.
Wrestling shoes.
You can wear Aikido pants. You know, but Rickson is the whole thing with Royce being the first guy. He's the one who blew jiu-jitsu up. He's the only guy to ever wear a gi and fight MMA. Maybe there's another guy. Maybe there was one or two other guys. But Yoshida was a judo guy in Pride, and he wore a gi. Coupled the two guys. But as far as Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Brazilians, Royce is the only one. But he was the first one and made the most impact. So right there, the Brazilians that were already fighting, they were already fighting no gi. Royce was not the first guy to fight.
Yeah, it was volley judo.
Royce is like the millionth guy to fight. But he was the first guy in the UFC, and the UFC was our first taste of it. So you had all these Brazilians, all of them fighting no gi. They're not fighting in the gi. And then they get mad at you want to train no gi. They fight no gi. Everybody fights no gi, no gi, no gi, no gi. And then you train no gi, you're a traitor.
Well, you've taken this
It's
a step further,
ridiculous.
but
This is an example of mass hypnosis. You know, you get flashed at that first impression. They just saw the gi and they saw Royce and they go, and that was it. That was it. You had to train in the gi. If you were gonna, Royce was in the gi. You have to train. If that wouldn't have been Royce, if that would have been Royler, it could have easily been Royler. Royler would have not fought in the gi. He's never fought in the gi. Neither has Rickson. That was almost Rickson. There wouldn't be a gi no gi debate. There wouldn't be a gi no gi debate.
Okay.
If you wouldn't have walked in with the
If it wasn't Royce, it's just like that's an MK Ultra. Boom. Nobody's fighting in the gi. Royce is the only one fighting in the gi. Nobody. Rickson's no gi, Minotauro no gi, Fabricio Verdun no gi, everybody no gi, and they had their shots. It's illegal in the UFC, but all the Brazilians that fought in the UFC in Pride, they could have all worn gis. There was one judo guy, Nakamura, he wore a gi top. And Nino Schembri wore a gi top once too. But anyways, my point is, none of the Brazilians are wearing gis. So it's okay to fight, do the most important shit. The shit that you're training for. The shit that you're training for is a no-gi situation. But when you train no-gi, you ain't doing jiu-jitsu.